Hi, it's Steph. And if you've been around the channel for a while, or if you're new, this here is a space that my husband George and I have been working on for the last 2 years. It is a newer garden called our Japanese maple garden. And because it was a work in progress, we never had a chance to formally tour this space and name all of our maples. Well, as of last season, it is now complete and our maples are looking beautiful with their spring color. So let's go ahead and take a walk through our collection. When you see trees with beautiful color variations like this, you typically think of the color changes of fall, but it is spring and our Japanese maples shine with all of these beautiful colors. Now, there are Japanese maples that have beautiful fall color, but the collection that we happen to have really shines in the spring. And before we get into the collection, I'm going to show you the tree that started this love and obsession with the Japanese maple. The Bloodgood Japanese maple. This is the traditional red-leafed Japanese maple that most people think about when they think about Japanese maples. And you traditionally see these in people's front landscape, which is exactly how we started. I had purchased 2 of these Bloodgood Japanese maples to place in our front yard right by our driveway. And I noticed that my husband George had a little bit of interest in Japanese maple trees. Now, I am a gardener, he is not. So for our 17th wedding anniversary, I started researching Japanese maples so that I could gift him one or some. And I found that there is such a large collection of these available, so many to choose from. So that is when I ordered a couple and brought them into the garden, and from that point forward we started learning about them together and have really been enjoying them. We'll start here in this bed that we just created last fall using the sheet mulching method, and I do have a video about that on my channel if you wanted to check it out. And we created this bed to house a couple more Japanese maples that we had picked up. This here is an amber ghost, and it is part of the ghost series. And the ghost series is categorized by the leaves that have this reticulation in them. And we have a couple more in the garden that we'll get to. But this one has a really beautiful amber color, sort of burnt orange as its spring color. And it looks really pretty. Here we have the Bloodgood, which we just talked about, and this is actually the tree that sort of started this whole bed because we had this one as a standalone tree with a tree ring around it. And then when we purchased a couple more Japanese maples, we thought that this would be a great spot to kind of add on to our collection. So now we have this as the centerpiece of this bed. And the Bloodgood, if you take a look at the shape of the leaves, they have these really large red leaves, and they are considered an Acer palmatum. In fact, 9 out of 10 Japanese maples will be classified as Acer palmatums. And coming over to the other end, we have what they call a full moon Japanese maple, and they are the Acer shirosawa, and the full moon is the shape of their leaves. And this one is called Aureum. It's got a really beautiful chartreuse color with the bits of red. It's just really stunning in the spring. And then it goes a little bit more yellow as the season goes on. As we head into the main Japanese maple garden, we will look at this beauty here. Now, there are Katsura trees, but this happens to be a Katsura Japanese maple. And in true Katsura Japanese maple fashion, this is the first Japanese maple to leaf out. It is in our garden and for many people as well. This one starts off a really beautiful orange. It almost looks like a fireball. I'm actually going to insert some footage of what it looked like when it began to leaf out. Then it goes a bit yellow with red around the edges before finally going a bit of a chartreuse color into the summer. This tree has only been here for about 3 years now, and it has grown a lot. So it's a really quick grower. Now, most Japanese maples are considered medium-sized trees, and they're really easy to size control with regular pruning. And George's favorite, autumn moon. This one is absolutely stunning. Look at the size of this leaf. It's gorgeous. Now, this currently has a bit of a mixed coloring. It has a bit of green and some orange. And then in the summer, it will go orange, and it also has really beautiful fall color. It's very similar to the Moonrise Japanese maple, which we also have in our collection and we'll get to shortly. And as we go down the path, here we have another beautiful burnt orange, amber colored Japanese maple. In fact, it's very similar to the amber ghost we just looked at. And this one is called Ariadne. Now, the Ariadne has really beautiful amber burnt orange spring color. Then it will go green in the summer before turning red in the fall. We'll move over to the corner and then we'll work our way back down the path. So we have a couple in pots as well, and they look really nice and they can be grown quite well in pots. In fact, it's a great way to try Japanese maples because you can kind of move around the pots pretty easily to see what kind of light conditions they like in your garden. Now, most Japanese maples prefer part shade, but they can tolerate more sun if it's morning sun in protected locations. Now, this is what they call the dancing peacock. And this tree has stunning fall color. It is like the brightest red you would ever seen. It's gorgeous. It's starting to get a really nice shape. Eventually, I'd like to find a more permanent spot in the garden, but I quite like it as a potted plant at the moment. And this is a moonrise. Now, we have two moonrises. We have this one in a pot, and we have another planted out in the garden. But you can see how it's very similar to the autumn moon. Also has that full moon shaped leaf with very similar color changes to the autumn moon as well. In this corner here, this beauty is called Orange Dream. And this one does experience a little bit of sun scorch once in a while, but that's the thing. The lighter colored ones are more susceptible to sun scorch, but over time they will acclimate to their location and burn less. And you can see the beautiful coloring on this one as well. So in the spring, it starts off orange and then it goes to this beautiful yellow, and it pretty much stays this color until it gets a little bit of fall coloring. And here we have shrubs, which there are two names for this tree. They often go by geishas gone wild and by shrubs. And it has a smaller leaf, but what I really like about it is that it almost has like this pink coloring. It's really beautiful in the spring. You can see it has red in the center with pink on the outer edges. And in the fall, if you recall, George and I had gone to a local nursery in Rhode Island called the Farmer's Daughter. And at that point, they had started to mark down some trees, and we brought home this beauty. Now, this is called Pastel, and it has a really cute wooden crate type box. But what's the best part about this tree is obviously the tree and the foliage. We were so surprised at its spring color and the size of the leaves. This one also has some of that amber burnt orange color with a little bit of pink to it. It's gorgeous. We were really happy to add this to our collection when we saw the spring color this season. So I think we're going to keep this one in a pot for a little bit longer because we really like the way that it looks, and we're able to take the pot and kind of move it around to see where we like it. So that's another good thing about pots, is that you can fill gaps in the garden with potted maples. And the pastel Japanese maple goes from this amber color to red. And here we have a Mikawa Yatsubusa. And these are beautiful as well because they have stacked leaves. You can see that they look like they stack one on top of the other. Just very unique looking. In the spring emerges a bright lime green, and I'll insert some footage of what it looked like just a week ago. And then it goes to this shade of green. And that was the most difficult thing for me to decide, was to when to have this tour, because the colors change so quickly. And in just a matter of a week, they will go from one color to another. And some are still unfurling. So I think that today was going to be a happy medium where most of them are unfurled and pretty much at peak spring color. And this here is another of the Ghost series, and this is Sister Ghost. Now, Sister Ghost is another one that you can see has the reticulation, which is characteristic of the Ghost series, and it has a really beautiful yellow spring color. And then in the summer, it goes green, and it stays green for summer and fall. Here we have another red variety, and this one is called Fire Glow. And we actually have two Fire Glows. We have one in the front yard and one here in this area, and it's just another really pretty red variety. And it's a bit brighter than the Bloodgood Japanese maple. And down the path, we have another beauty that's also a full moon shaped leaf, and this is Jordan. And this one is such a beautiful chartreuse green. So vibrant. This one does get a little bit of leaf scorch, but this time of year, it's still nice and cool in the spring, and it's looking absolutely gorgeous. And then the spring color is this chartreuse, and then it goes a bit more yellow in the summer. And it pretty much stays yellow, summer and fall. Around the corner here, we have another ghost tree. This is the purple ghost. And the purple ghost has a really vibrant red in the center with darker red, almost purple on the edges with that reticulation. That belongs to the ghost series. And we just planted this in this spot, this tree, last fall. And I think it's going to be really great. What we tried to do was put different colors that would offset one another, so that when you look back here, you have such a beautiful, colorful garden just from use of these trees. And we have a couple more Japanese maples that we've dotted around the perimeter of this main Japanese maple garden that I'll show you now. Starting here with the burgundy lace Japanese maple. And it's a lace leaf type Japanese maple, and it is red and very similar to two others that we have called Garnet and Tamakiyama. Now we placed this one here in this space so that it would be like a red tree against the green backdrop of the wooded area. And I think this is going to be a really nice space for it. My dogwood's also looking really beautiful at the moment. Now down this path here we have a couple more Japanese maples, and this one here is the bihu, and this is one that has struggled here in our zone 6. We had a couple of years where it had quite a bit of dieback, and you'll know that you have dieback when the stem starts going black, and then you have to cut it off, disinfect your pruners, and see if it bounces back. And it's held on. But the characteristic thing about the bihu is that it's very similar to, say, the sangu kaku or the coral bark maple, where the coral bark has a red or coral bark. This one, the bihu, has a yellow bark. So in the winter, it has yellow bark, which is very characteristic and very vibrant and beautiful. And it also has a really bright yellow fall color on the foliage. We have another Japanese maple that's not a fancy variety. It's actually a seedling, but it's doing really well. We have it planted here in this wooded area because we don't really know what type of tree it is. It was just a seedling from one of our trees that we sort of just grew on. And look, it's doing really well. And one that we just picked up recently that had been on George's wish list, it is the Golden Falls. And here it is. This is one that cascades, also known as the waterfall type. There is a variety called Ryusen that does a similar effect. What it does is it'll grow up to a certain point. You can train it to get to a certain height. And then once it gets to that height, you can stop training it upward and just let it cascade downward. And it has a really pretty shape. This one also has really beautiful coloring. This one stays yellow all year. And we liked it here because, again, the bright pop of yellow really stands out against the green in the backdrop of the woods. And going down this path, which I really love the way this grassy area is becoming almost a second path. Eventually, we're going to have this whole border gardened, including some Japanese maples and other things. And I think it'll look really beautiful to walk through. But we have another bed that we're sort of starting. And here we have a moonrise. And this is a larger moonrise than the one that we have in the pot. We have two moonrises. We have a couple of doubles of the ones we really like. But look how large this leaf is. So beautiful. So again, it's very similar to the autumn moon. And it just has such a gorgeous coloring. I would say that this is among one of my favorites. Besides the Orium, it's a toss-up. And this is one that we also just added recently, and this is the Skeeter's Broom. And the thing about the Skeeter's Broom is that it grows more columnar shape. So rather than a traditional Japanese maple that has a rounded tree shape, this one here will grow more columnar. And there are a couple that will grow that way. The Skeeter's Broom is one, and the Twombly's Red Sentinel is another. But they're both red, the Twombly's and the Skeeter's broom. I just think that the Skeeter's has a little bit brighter red. So that's the one that we selected. And right here is another Orium. So this is another that we have a double of. And this is a little baby, but it's also all leafed out and looking really pretty. Now that we've gone through all of the maples, I'll just go through and show you some more things that I have planted in this space. In this area, I'm trying to stick to mostly foliage plants as well as dwarf evergreens and conifers. So some of the things that I have planted in here are some lady's mantle that I dotted on the entrance to the garden underneath the maples. I also have some Japanese forest grass, the Hakonakloa, and this one happens to be called areola. It's a variegated green and yellow variety. And I have things like lungwort or pulmonaria planted in here, as well as some heuchera. I even added some hosta here and there, but that has been really difficult to keep going in this garden because we deal with deer. Luckily, they don't seem to touch our maples too much. This is a really cool dwarf hinoki called Cherryman, and we had picked this up at Hassan's Tolan Farm in Connecticut. And these are some Fire Chief Arborvitae. And these are great because they get a really pretty bronze color, almost a shade of red in the winter, colder months. And then they start getting a pretty chartreuse, bright yellow green in the towards the end of spring and summer. And they stay pretty compact. They grow in a rounded, mounded shape, about 4 by 4. So I think it'll fill up this space eventually. Here we have a weeping blue spruce that was a Mother's Day gift about 3 years ago now, and it's doing really well. Some more Hakonakloa. This is the all gold. It's a really pretty chartreuse yellow color. And some nice clover weed that I have to pull out from there. But this will eventually grow and sort of cascade in this corner, and I think it'll look really pretty to soften this edge. Here I have a golden Duchess hemlock, and I really love this evergreen. It grows wider than it does tall, so it grows more horizontally, and it's got this really beautiful yellow coloring. And like I said, we deal with deer, and so far this hemlock has been untouched. Knock on wood, fingers crossed, they keep away, but it seems to be doing really well in this space, and I think that it's going to fit this spot really well, even as it continues to grow. Here we have a hinoki that is struggling a little bit, but I did give it some Coast of Maine organic lobster compost, and I'm hoping that it bounces back. I also gave it a little bit of fertilizer, so we're going to give it some more time to see if it will come back to life, fill out a little bit more, and if not, we can replace it, but I'll give it another chance. And this is my absolute favorite heuchera. It is the caramel heuchera. What beautiful colors this heuchera has. It has orange and red and yellow. It's stunning. Now I started with one plant. I divided it into 3. Those 2 are a little bit bigger. This one is a little bit smaller, but they're beautiful and doing pretty well. And a hinoki. Now this one I believe is called Costeri. It stays relatively small and compact. I love hinokis because they have this like ferny texture that sort of looks like it's stacked. It's just really pretty textural evergreen. Now I also have some ferns in this space, but they are just starting to unfurl. Japanese painted fern, this one here is Godzilla, and they take a little while to come to. So if you think your ferns died, just give them some time. They do take a little while to emerge in the spring. I also have a dwarf oak leaf hydrangea right in this space that I'm trying to protect from the deer. It is called Little Honey, and it's got really beautiful yellow leaves that get red in the fall, so really pretty. It only gets to be about 3 by 4 in size, so very compact. And here are some hosta that I sort of dotted underneath the Ariadne. so that they can get a little bit of shade. Currently, this whole garden is part sun, but as these trees grow and they get a larger canopy, everything underneath will become shade. And I'm actually really excited to have some shade areas to garden in, because currently most of my garden is sun. This really pretty evergreen is a golden oriental spruce, very similar to the Skylands spruce. And it's currently putting out all of its new spring growth. Gets these really vibrant, almost like green cones at the end. I have lots of lamb's ear planted in this space, and I actually really love the way that it makes this mound of soft, fuzzy foliage and this blue-green coloring with a little bit of gray to it. It's just really beautiful. And the Helen von Steen lamb's ear, which is this variety, doesn't bloom, which is great because it is less likely to become invasive, but it does spread pretty wide, so it does make a great ground cover. Right here, I have another evergreen that I really love, and it's so unique and cool. It is a whipcord arborvitae. I feel like I could just put a pair of sunglasses here and it would look like a cousin it. It's a really fun one. And so far it's been doing okay in this spot. I have a couple of Ito peonies that I started from bare root. I have a Julia Rose and a Cora Louise. So this will be their second year. So I'm not expecting a whole lot from them. I have one here and one back there. That one's actually a lot larger. So we might get a couple of blooms off of this one this year. Maybe. It's still a little early to tell, but really pretty Ito peonies. They're a little sturdier than, say, the herbaceous peonies. They're a cross between an herbaceous and a tree peony, the Itos. And you can see some of my Japanese painted ferns are starting to emerge, and they have a really beautiful color. Now these certainly want shade. I had them in a little bit more sun and they really did take a beating. They started to get really scorched, so I had to move them to this area here where they would get a bit more shade. And here are two more dwarf evergreens that I recently purchased. These conifers are going to go in this garden space as well. And this is a Korean fir icebreaker. It's got this really beautiful, almost like a frosted color to them. And it stays like this all year. It almost looks like it was kissed by snow or frost. And this one here is called Tom Thumb, and it's also a really small conifer or dwarf. And dwarf just means that it has a really slow growth rate. Well, that brings us to the end of our Japanese maple garden tour. I hope that you enjoyed checking out our Japanese maple collection, as well as some of the conifers and plantings that we have in this space. Thank you so much for spending your time with us, and I'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please hit the thumbs up button, and please consider subscribing so you don't miss any of my future videos. And we'll see you soon.